بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الناصح الأمين. اللهم صل على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue going over the tremendous book by the Fadilat Shaykh Al-Allama Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. The book which is entitled Kitab Aqeedatut Tawheed, the book of the Aqeedah of Tawheed. We have reached the second section in this chapter, which is dealing with Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. In this particular chapter, it is في بيان معنى شهادتين وما وقع فيهما من الخطأ وأركانهما وشروطهما ومقتضاهما ونواقضهما. And that is the explanation of the meaning of the shahadatain. The explanation of the meaning of the shahadatain and the errors that have taken place with regards to it, as well as going over the pillars for it, or the pillars for both parts of the shahada, and the conditions for the shahadatain and that which is necessitated by it, as well as those things which will nullify them. With Nillahi Ta'ala, we're going to take the first portion of what was mentioned in today's class, inshallah ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, أولا معنى شهادتين. Firstly, the meaning of the shahadatain. Right? The meaning of the shahadatain. The Shaykh, he says, معنى الشهادة أن لا إله إلا الله. The meaning of the first portion of the shahada, he says al-i'tiqad wa iqrar. It is to have a belief and an acknowledgement and an agreement أنه لا يستحق العبادة إلا الله, that verily none has any right to worship except Allah. والتزام ذلك والعمل به, and one must adhere to this and he must act in accordance to it. He must adhere to it and he must act in accordance to it. فلا إله نفي. So la ilaha, this is a negation. La ilaha, this portion, this is a negation or a negation. نفي لاستحقاق من سوى الله للعبادة كائنا من كان. This is a negation for everything other than Allah Ta'ala having any type of right to ibadah, no matter who they may be. No matter who they may be. So this negates all worship for everything save Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa illallah, and the phrase illallah, this is ithbat listihqaq Allah wahdahu lil'ibadah. Then this is an affirmation affirming that Allah by Himself He is the only one who is worthy and deserving of worship. He is the only one worthy and deserving of worship. وَمَعْنَى هَذِهِ كَلِمَةِ إِجْمَالًا. So therefore the meaning of this kalima altogether, it is لَا مَعْبُودَ بِحَقٍّ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. That nothing has the right to be worshipped in truth except Allah. Naam. So if someone were to ask you, مَا مَعْنَى لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, then this will be how you will answer them. And that is to say, لَا مَعْبُودَ بِحَقٍّ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Naam. So again, if someone were to ask you, مَا مَعْنَى لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, then the answer will be الجواب لا معبود بحق إلا الله. Right? Everybody memorize that already? So what will it be? لا معبود بحق إلا الله. Again, لا معبود بحق إلا الله. So we have لا معبود بحق إلا الله. Naam. So again, that's what? Naam. Again? Naam. La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah, which means that nothing has the right to be worshipped in truth except for Allah. And then the Shaykh, he brings a grammatical point here. He says, wa khabrun la, because this la here in la ilaha illallah is a type of la that requires its own predicate. So we don't want to get too deep into it. So we'll suffice what the Shaykh mentions. But the la, khabrun la, yajibu taqdiru, that the predicate of la, then it is a must. We understand that which is implied, right, is bihaqqin. That which is implied is bihaqqin. Because you find in the grammatical construction of la ilaha illallah that the khabar or the predicate for la is removed verbally from the sentence. So the articulation of the predicate is not there. But this type of la, it requires a subject and it requires a predicate. However, in the Arabic language, sometimes when the predicate is well known, or often is the case, we should say, that when the predicate is well known, then it's not articulated. You will take it out from articulation because it is understood. Because it is understood, right? So in this particular case, when one will look at La ilaha illallah, he won't find a predicate. This is because the predicate has been taken away verbally, but it's understood. It's understood, right? So what is that predicate? What is that predicate? The Shaykh, he says, yajibu taqdiru. It is a must that the predicate is, that the implied predicate is bihaqqin, in truth. That's the implied predicate. And the Shaykh, he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ تَقْدِيرُهُ بِمَوْجُودٍ. And it is not permissible to say that which is implied is really in existence. Right? Because some of the ulama, some of the evil ulama, those who are astray, they will author books and they will say that the predicate or the implied predicate for La ilaha illallah, then it is the mawjood, in existence, right? So they will say, so therefore the meaning of La ilaha illallah is that nothing has the right to be worshipped in existence, or nothing is worshipped in existence except for Allah. You with me? That nothing is worshipped in existence except Allah. Very dangerous statement, right? And this is because they say what is implied, that implied predicate is in existence. But that is not the implied predicate. Because the implied predicate, which bring forth the meaning that is intended, is bihaqqin, in truth. That there is nothing worshipped in truth except Allah. There's nothing worshipped in truth except Allah. Because if we go back now to what they say it means, the wrong meaning, right? Because remember the Shaykh, the chapter title, في بيان معنى شهادتين وما وقع فيهما من الخطأ. The meaning of the shahadatain and that which comes therein from what is wrong and the erroneous meanings, right? Because some, they will come and they say that it means that there's nothing worshipped in existence except Allah. The Shaykh, he says, لأن هذا خلاف واقع. He said you will find this is one, if you look at it from one standpoint, this is, or one direction, this is opposite of what takes place. Because are there things that are worshipped that are not Allah? Yes, right? People worship rocks, stones, celestial bodies, prophets, messengers, angels, and so on and so forth. People worship other things. So the Shaykh, he said, this is khilafun waqi'. This is contrary to what is happening. It's contrary to the reality of the situation. فَالْمَعْبُودَاتِ غَيْرُ اللَّهِ مَوْجُودَ بِكَثْرَةٍ. The Shaykh, he says, and those things that are worshipped other than Allah, then they are present in abundance. There are many things people worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, فَلْيَلْزِمُ مِنْهُ أَنَّ الْعِبَادَةِ هَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ عِبَادَةً لِلَّهِ. And also, because we have established that there are things that are worshipped other than Allah, from cows, from rocks, from trees, from monkeys, from whatever. People worship a lot of stuff, right? So to say that nothing is worshipped in existence except Allah, from one standpoint, we know that's not correct. Because what? Because there are other things that are worshipped. So once we have established that there are other things that are worshipped, and we look back at what they say it means, which is nothing is worshipped in existence except Allah, the Shaykh, he says, then this will mean that the worship of these other things is in fact the worship of Allah. You understand that? Because if you say that there is nothing worshipped in existence except Allah, but we know the Hindus worship the cows, and people worship saints and rocks and moons and so on and so forth, right? So when we look at this false meaning, then this means all of those things that are worshipped, then it's Allah. A'udhu billah. The Shaykh, he says, وَهَذَا مِنْ أَبْطَلِ الْبَاطِلِ. And this is from the most erroneous of false things. This is the most erroneous of false things. وَهُوَ مَذْهَبُ أَهْلِ وَحْدَةِ الْوُجُودِ. And this is the madhab of the proponents of وَحْدَةِ الْوُجُودِ, who believe in a oneness of existence. You understand? Because the shaitan, how he got the Hindu to worship the cow and all these other things in which they worship and so on and so forth, was because those Hindus who really know about their religion, they will say to you, we are not worshiping these things themselves, but we are worshiping the divine aspect of these things, because they believe that the Creator manifests Himself in these forms. So they'll say we're worshiping the divine aspect of these things because the Creator is everywhere and in everything. You understand? So this is why the Shaykh, he says this is from the most erroneous of erroneous things. So when a person says that Allah is everywhere, this is the most disbelieving of disbelieving statements. Because everywhere means everywhere. Everywhere means everywhere. And you found that those people inside of the Ansar cult, the followers of Dr. York, you find this was the place in which they had reached based upon this false belief. Because they were people who believed in the oneness of the existence, meaning that there is no separation between the Creator and created things. So they believed that Allah was everywhere and inside of everything. So where the shaitan had them take this false belief to, and mind you now, when they were claiming Islam, they were Sufis upon bid'ah of tasawwuf, right? And khurufat, and he made up stories and fairy tales and so on and so forth. This was their way. But in any event, shaitan capitalized on this belief of theirs until it came to the point where they said, being that Allah is everywhere and inside of everything, then that means Allah is inside of me, and that means therefore we are gods, and that means that we don't have to pray to anyone outside of ourselves. So they stopped praying to anyone outside of themselves because they deem themselves to be gods. You see? And it led to what it led to, right? And they admittedly amongst themselves left Islam. You understand? They make takfir upon themselves by saying we are no longer Muslims. وَعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. عَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ, this is where this concept leads to. So those 5%ers who are upon what they are upon because of this concept. Those Hindus who are upon what they are upon is because of this concept, and so on and so forth, believing that Allah is within the creation. However, you will find that those who believe in this as they do, that Allah is everywhere, then you will find that their disbelief is even greater than the disbelief of the 5%ers who claim that they are gods, because they only consider a select portion of the people to have God within them. Although we know to say that God is inside of anyone and that Allah is inside of anyone, then this is kufr. It's not acceptable, it's kufr, right? But if you look, it's the same dalala that Shaitani fooled the Christians with, the same dalala he tricked the Hindus with, the same dalala he got the 5%ers with, and Nation of Islam, quote unquote Nation of Islam, they were the Nation of Kufr, that's their real name, the Nation of Kufr, and the same dalala that he got the Ansar cult with, and the followers of Dr. York, who end up believing they was aliens from another planet and all this nonsense and the like. The same trick you fool them all with. And that came from the concept of there being no separation between Allah and the creation. But we know that Allah Ta'ala, He is outside of His creation, and that He is separate from His creation. Jalla wa'ala. Ala kulli hal, when a person were to say there is nothing that is worshipped in existence except Allah, then what they are saying is, and what is implied and meant by that statement, is because everything that is worshipped in existence is Allah. وَعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And we know that that's not correct. And that is not the intended meaning of La ilaha illallah. But if anything, that is what? That is the opposite. That is the opposite. Because La ilaha illallah, it is the kalima of Tawheed. Whereas to say this statement and what they're saying, that's a kalima of shirk. It's a kalima of shirk. So from that standpoint, we know that's not the meaning. That's not the meaning. Naam. طيب. The Shaykh, he says that this statement of theirs, that everything that is worshipped is Allah, هذا من أبطل الباطل, this is from the most erroneous of things that is erroneous and wrong. وهو مذهب أهل وحدة الوجود, and it is the madhab of the people who believe in the oneness of existence. The Shaykh, he says, الذين هم أكثر أهل الأرض, those who are the most disbelieving people in the earth. The people who believe in this concept, they are the most disbelieving people in the earth. The Shaykh, he says, وَقَدْ فُصِّرَتْ هَذِهِ الكَّلِمَةِ بِتَفْسِرَاتٍ بَاطِلَةٍ. He said in this kalima, it has been given erroneous definitions, some of which are as follows. The first one, أَنَّ مَعْنَا لَا مَعْبُودَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. He said, the meaning, the first erroneous meaning, is that which is, there is no God except Allah. There is no God except Allah. We heard this one before, right? This is how you find the people who are astray. They translate La ilaha illallah. There's no God except Allah. Or some they say there's no God except God. There's no God except God. This is wrong. Why? Because it coincides with the aforementioned meaning of which we said, them saying La ma'buda bi mawjood illallah. That there's nothing that is worshipped in existence except Allah. It's the same meaning as saying there is no God except Allah. Because a ma'bud is that which is worshipped. Right? So when you say there is no ma'bud except Allah, then you're saying what? What's implied is what? Is that everything that is worshipped is Allah. Everything that is worshipped is Allah. وَإِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And the Shaykh, he says, وَهَذَا بَاطِلٌ. And this is erroneous. لأن معناه أن كل معبود بحق أو باطل هو الله. He said, and this is erroneous because what this means and implies is that everything that is worshipped, either in truth or in falsehood, then it's all Allah. And the Shaykh, he says, this is false. كما سبق بيانه قريبا. Just like we just got finished explaining. Or just like the explanation of that, it came shortly before. The second meaning from the false and erroneous meanings is أن معناه, that its meaning is لا خالق إلا الله, that there is no creator except Allah. So some people, they will come and they say that the meaning of La ilaha illallah, it means there is no creator except Allah. The Shaykh, he says, وَهَذَا جُزْء مِنْ مَعْنَى هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَةِ. He said, and this is a portion of the meaning of this kalima, وَلَكِنْ لَيْسَ هُوَ الْمَقْصُودِ. He said, but this is not that which is intended. Meaning that this statement, it enters into the meaning of La ilaha illallah, but this is not what is intended by La ilaha illallah. لأنه لا يضبط إلا التوحيد الربوبية. He said, because it will only confirm and it only affirms Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. وَهُوَ لَا يَكْفِي. But Tawheed al-Rububiyyah by itself is not enough. The Shaykh, he says, what Tawheed, this type of this category of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is not complete by itself. And the Shaykh, he says, هُوَ Tawheed al-Mushrikeen. This is in fact the Tawheed of the polytheists. Right? This is the Tawheed of the polytheists, meaning that this is the category of Tawheed that the polytheists agree with. That there is no Khaliq, there is no Raziq except Allah. That there is no creator and there is no sustainer except Allah, to the end of it. But this is not enough to enter them into al-Islam. So we understand that this is not the intended meaning of La ilaha illallah, because the Prophet ﷺ became calling the people to La ilaha illallah, to take them out of polytheism and to enter them into Islam. So if this portion, if a person believes in it, won't enter them into al-Islam, then this can't be the meaning of La ilaha illallah, which by way of it a person will enter into al-Islam. So we understand that's not the meaning. It is a portion of the meaning as it points to a Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, but it's not the sum of the meaning, so therefore that cannot be what is intended, and that is not the meaning of La ilaha illallah. The next one is that they say the meaning of it is La hakimiyyata illa lillah, that there is no legislation except for Allah. Right? There is no legislation except for Allah, meaning no one makes laws except for Allah. Right? They say this is what it means. The Shaykh, he says, وَهَذَا أَيْضًا جُزْء مِنْ مَعْنَاهِ. He said, also, like what was mentioned just before this one, this is just a portion of its meaning. وَلَيْسَ هُوَ الْمَقْصُودِ. And this is not which is intended. This is just a portion of the meaning. Now, we know Allah Ta'ala is one who legislates the Sharia. Allah legislates the Sharia. No one comes and he makes laws up, right? Because we go by Sharia. We don't go by what laws people make. Okay, you don't have the right to do such. Yeah. So, ala kullin, we know this is not the sum of the meaning. It's only a portion of the meaning. It's only a portion of the meaning. Because if we were to say that is the whole of the meaning, what about making ruku'? What about making sujood? What about making dua? If that's the only thing it means, then you can make sujood, ruku', dua to other than Allah, and it's okay because there's no infringement because you're not making laws. You're not making laws, right? So we understand that that's a portion of the meaning. That's not the whole of the meaning. The Shaykh, he says, لأنه لا يكفي. He said that's not enough. That's not enough, as we mentioned. The Shaykh, he says, لأنه لو أفرد الله بالحاكمية فقط والدعاء غير الله أو صرف له شيئا من العبادة لم يكن موحدا. He said, because if we say it's only al-hakimiyya only, but then a person he makes dua to other than Allah, or he gives some portions of ibadah to other than Allah, he said, then this person in reality will not be one who implements a Tawheed. He will not be a monotheist. The Shaykh, he says, وَكُلُّ هَذِهِ تَفَاسِيرٌ بَاطِلَةٌ أَوْ نَاقِصَةٌ. He says, so therefore you find that all of these tafsirs and all of these explanations of what they say the meaning of La ilaha illallah is, you will find that they are either false and erroneous or they are deficient, so therefore they don't convey their real meaning. The Shaykh, he says, وَأَنَّمَا نبهنا عليها لأنها توجد في بعض الكتب المتداولة. The Shaykh, he says, and verily we had mentioned these things because you will find that they are present in some of the books that are in circulation. We mention these affairs because you will find that they are present inside of some of the books in circulation. Now, على كل حال, the Shaykh, he says, وتفسير الصحيح لهذه الكلمة عند السلف ومحققين. He said, so therefore you find that the true and correct explanation for this kalima, as it was found with the Salaf and of those ulama from the muhaqqiqeen, he says, أن يقال, is to say, لا معبود بحق إلا الله كما سبق, is to say that nothing has the right to be worshipped in truth except Allah. Nothing has the right to be worshipped in truth except Allah. So in Arabic, how do we say that in Arabic again? نعم سنتم لا معبود بحق إلا الله. How do you say it again? نعم سنتم لا معبود بحق إلا الله. نعم. The Shaykh, he says, ومعنى شهادة أن محمدا رسول الله. And the meaning of the shahada, أن محمد رسول الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. What does that mean? The Shaykh, he says, هو الاعتراف باطلا وظاهرا. It is an acknowledgement that is internal and external. أنه عبد الله, that verily the Prophet ﷺ, he is the slave of Allah. وَرَسُولُ, and he is the messenger of Allah. إِلَى النَّاسِ, until mankind. كَافَّةً, until all of mankind. The human beings from amongst them, the jinn from amongst them, the males from amongst them, the females from amongst them, the black from amongst them, the white from amongst them, the Arab from amongst them, the non-Arab from amongst them, so on and so forth. That the Prophet ﷺ, he was sent to all of mankind, which is a refutation and shows the ignorance of those individuals who think that the Prophet ﷺ, he was only sent to the Arab, or that the people who convert or revert to al-Islam, then they're not real Muslims, as if the Prophet ﷺ wasn't sent to them. And it's unfortunate, but you find people like this, and they believe that the one who has reverted to al-Islam or converted to al-Islam, whichever the terms you find more dear, they believe that he's not a real Muslim. He's not a real Muslim. Why not a real Muslim? Right? And then they will say, because he converted to Islam. He came out of the womb of a woman who wasn't a Muslim. right? Because he wasn't always a Muslim. He used to be a kafir, but now he's not a real Muslim, right? So we asked him, and what was the situation of Abu Bakr? What about Umar? What about Uthman? What about Ali? What about Bilal? What about Suhaib al-Rumi? Radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And we keep going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. All of these Sahaba, what was their situation? What was their situation? They accepted Islam, right? They converted or reverted to al-Islam. So what are we saying now? That they're not the real Muslims? Yes, and so then who is? The man who owned the corner store? Yeah, so ala kulli hal, we understand the erroneousness of these individuals. The Prophet ﷺ, he was sent to all of mankind, all the way until the day of judgment. So a person, he comes now in this year, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he was sent, that person too. So that person, he has to believe in the Prophet ﷺ. He has to adorn himself with the Sharia that the Prophet ﷺ he came with, because he was sent to all of mankind, all of them. The human beings and the jinn, the black, the white, the Arab, the non-Arab, the male, the female, the young, the old, to the end of it. Now, the Shaykh, he says, so we have to believe internally and externally that verily he, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the slave of Allah and the messenger of Allah to all of mankind. وَعَمَلْ بِمُقْتَضَى ذَلِكَ مِنْ طَاعَتِهِ فِيمَا أَمَرْ. And we have to work in accordance to that which is necessitated by that, and that is by being obedient to him in that which he has commanded. وَتَصْدِيقُهُ فِيمَا أَخْبَرَ. And we have to believe in that which he informed us of. وَاجْتِنَابَ مَا نَهَى عَنْهُ وَزَجَرَ. And we have to stay away from that which he prevented us from and stayed away from. وَأَلَّا يُعْبَدَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَرَعَ. And we are not allowed to worship Allah except with that which he had legislated, right? Except for the legislation that the Prophet ﷺ came with. We're not allowed, we cannot worship Allah except with that, right? So this is what enters into the meaning, or this is what is the meaning of وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And testify and witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So this is the meaning of it. Shaykh, he also mentions inside of the chapter title and the arkan, right? And the arkan. So we want to look at first the arkan of La ilaha illallah, right? And then we're going to look at the arkan of Muhammad Rasulullah. So firstly, when it comes to the arkan, and the arkan, the word arkan is the plural ruknun, naam. And the arkan, or the pillar, has been called such because it is that which is likened to the pillars of a structure, so that if the rukn is missing, then the structure will collapse. If the pillar is gone, then the structure will collapse. So we see that La ilaha illallah, it has arkan, it has pillars, and in this case it has ruknan, it has two pillars. For rukn awwal, so the first pillar, for rukn awwal, the first pillar is an-nafi. The first pillar of La ilaha illallah, for rukn awwal, it is an-nafi. It is an-nafi. And an-nafi, this means negation. So the first pillar is negation, right? And that is in Allah Ta'ala's, or that is in the statement, La ilaha. That is in the statement, La ilaha. That nothing has the right to be worshipped. That nothing has the right to be worshipped in truth. But yeah, the Shaykh, he says, يُبْطِلُ الشِّرْكِ بِجَمِيعِ أَنْوَاعِهِ. This portion it will eradicate shirk in all of its types. This first portion, it negates shirk in all of its types. It negates shirk in all of its types. ويوجب الكفر بما يعبد من دون الله. And it also necessitates a disbelief in everything that is worshipped other than Allah. So it also necessitates a disbelief in everything that is worshipped other than Allah. So this is the first type, the first rukn. وركن الثاني, and the second pillar, al-ithbat. Then this is affirmation. Affirmation. And this is found in the statement, illallah, except Allah. ويثبت أنه لا يستحق العبادة إلا الله. And this affirms that none has the right to be worshipped and is worthy of being worshipped except Allah. ويوجب عمل بذلك. And this necessitates that one he act in accordance to this. This necessitates that when he acts in accordance to this. وَقَدْ جَاءَ مَعْنَ هَذَيْنِ الرُّكْنَيْنِ. And there comes the meaning and the dalil of both of these two pillars في كثير من الآيات, in many verses. You find this in many verses that will bring both of these pillars together inside of the ayah. The Shaykh, he says, مثل, for an example, قوله تعالى, Allah Ta'ala's statement, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. That whoever disbelieves in the Taghut, in those things that are worshipped other than Allah, those who disbelieve in the false deities, وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, and they believe in Allah, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى, then they would have taken hold of the most trustworthy handhold. The ulama, they explain that the most trustworthy handhold, then this is La ilaha illallah. So in order to have taken grasp of the most trustworthy handhold, which is La ilaha illallah, then a person must disbelieve in the false deities, and they must believe in Allah. Right? The Shaykh Hamdulillah Ta'ala, he says, قوله Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala's statement, مَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ, whoever disbelieves in the false deities, هُوَ مَعْنَى رُكْنُ أَوَّلٍ, this is the meaning of the first, this is the meaning of Rukn al-Awwal, the first pillar, which is La ilaha. La ilaha, right? Coincides with what? وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ, and whoever disbelieves in the false deities. وَهُوَ مَعْنَى رُكْنُ الْأَوَّلِ لَا إِلَهَ. وَقَوْلُهُ, and his statement, وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, and they believe in Allah. This is affirming the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ مَعْنَى رُكْنُ الثَّانِي إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and this is the meaning of the second pillar, which is illallah, except Allah. So we find negating the false deities by disbelieving in them, and then affirmation by believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we find a negation followed by an affirmation. So it is a proof for the meaning of La ilaha illallah, that it means La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. So someone came and they say, what's the dalil that La ilaha illallah means La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah? They point them here to this ayah, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ, whoever disbelieves in the false deities and they believe in Allah. And this ayah can be found in Surah Al-Baqarah, and it's verse 256. So again, it's Surah Al-Baqarah, and it's verse 256 is the ayah right after Ayatul Kursi. Now, we have another example of this as it comes in the Qur'an, and this can be found in Surah Zukhruf, in his verse 26 and 27, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He informs us about what Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he said to his people, where he said to them, إِنِّي بَرَاءٌ مِمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي. Where Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, as Allah informed us, he told to his people, verily, I am free from that which you worship. I am free, I disassociate myself from those things that you worship. He said, except for the one who fashioned me. Except for the one who fashioned me. So he affirmed, right, that he is not free from the one who fashioned him. He affirmed his ibadah for the one who fashioned him, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, فَقَوْلُ إِنَّنِي بَرَاء. He says, so his statement that verily, I am free, I am from you free. He says, هُوَ مَعْنَى النَّفِي فِي رُكْنِ الْأَوَّلِ. Then this is conveys the meaning of a negation, which is the first pillar. وَقَوْلُ, and his statement, إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, except for the one who has fashioned me. وَهُوَ مَعْنَى الْإِثْبَاتِ فِي رُكْنِ الثَّانِي. Then this is the meaning of affirmation inside of the second pillar. Now, so again in this ayah, we find the negation comes first and then the affirmation comes. Just like in the kalima of La ilaha illallah, we find the negation comes first and then the affirmation comes. Now, so again, this can be used as a proof to show that the meaning of La ilaha illallah is La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah, and a proof pointing to the pillars of La ilaha illallah being a negation and an affirmation. So now this brings us to the arkan of Muhammad Rasulullah, the arkan of Shahada anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. The Shaykh, he says, وَلَهَا رُكْنَان, and it has as well two pillars, right? وَهُمَا قَوْلُنَا, and it is our statement, عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. It is our statement, his slave and his messenger, right? So what are the two pillars for Muhammad Rasulullah? One, his slave. The second, his messenger. So the first pillar is his slave. That the Prophet ﷺ, he is the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is that the Prophet ﷺ, he is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Shaykh, he says, and this is very important, the Shaykh, he says, وَهُمَا يَنْفِيَانِ الْإِفْرَاطِ وَالتَّفْرِيطِ فِي حَقِّهِ sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, and this is that which will negate having an exaggerated opinion as well, or having a extremely neglectful and dismissive opinion as relates to the rights of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So by saying he is the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by way of this now, we won't take him beyond his station. We won't glorify him beyond his rank and raise him above his rank, so that we give to him uluhiyyah. That we give to him uluhiyyah. Because he is an abd from the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he doesn't deserve anything from uluhiyyah. And likewise, by saying he is the messenger of Allah, now we won't become dismissive of him and to be neglectful with regards to his rights, as if he is nothing. وَيَعَذُ بِاللَّهِ, as some of the ignorant, foolish ones, they do. Right? So by saying abduhu wa rasuluh, it keeps us in the middle. It keeps us in the middle where we understand his status and we don't raise him above his status, but at the same time we understand that that status is high because he is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Shaykh, he says, فَهُوَ عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. So he is his slave and he is his messenger. وهو أكمل الخلق في هذين أو في هاتين صفتين الشريفتين, and he is the most complete of the creation as relates to these two noble characteristics. ومعنى العبد هنا, and the meaning of abd هنا, the meaning of slave here, it means mamluk al-abd. It means that he is owned, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he is the property of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And he is the worshipper. He is the property of Allah, and he is an avid worshipper. He is a worshipper. The Shaykh, he says, أي أنه بشر. He said, meaning he is a human being. He's a human being. مخلوق. He is created. He's created. And what is the Prophet ﷺ created from? مخلوق مما خلق منه البشر. He's created from that which human beings are created from. So the Prophet ﷺ, in his physical makeup, he is created from the same materials that human beings are created from, right? Because he's an abd from the ibad. He's a slave from the slaves. وَيَجْرِي عَلَيْهِ مَا يَجْرِي عَلَيْهِمْ. And there happens to the Prophet ﷺ that which happens to the rest of the slaves. In the sense of the Prophet ﷺ, he was born like the other slaves were born. The Prophet ﷺ, he ate and he drank like the slaves eat and drink. The Prophet ﷺ, he died like the slaves would die. So that which is applicable to the slaves is applicable to the Prophet ﷺ, because he is the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, كما قال تعالى, as Allah ta'ala, he says, قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم. Allah ta'ala, he says to the Prophet ﷺ, and what means, and say to them, O Muhammad, and say to them, إنما أنا بشر. Verily, I am nothing except a human being. مثلكم. I'm just a human being like you. Allah Ta'ala commanded the Prophet ﷺ, and say to them, O Muhammad, verily, I am nothing but a human being just like you. In this ayah, it could be found in Surah Al-Kahf, and it's verse 110. But these ayat are important, right? Because when you hear an individual remind the people that the Prophet ﷺ was a human being and he was a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes the people who go to the extreme in his regard, they get mad. And they make it seem as if you're being disrespectful. But then when you point them to the likes of this verse that can be found in Surah Kahf, that surah that many of the Muslims, they only know about the Qur'an inside the week until Friday come, and then they want to recite Surah Kahf, but yet they obviously have missed this ayah, didn't understand this one, right? Because when we look at the meaning of it, then where's the disrespect? What are you saying? Allah commanded the Prophet ﷺ to tell the people that I'm just a human being like you, right? طيب. وقد وفى صلى الله عليه وسلم العبودية حقها. And the Prophet ﷺ, he performed the ubudiyya in the most complete fashions. He implemented the ubudiyya, the servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the most complete of fashions. وَمَدَحَهُ اللَّهُ بِذَلِكَ. And Allah ta'ala, he praised the Prophet ﷺ for this. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he was the best slave of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is the best slave from the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore Allah ta'ala, he praised him for this. Allah ta'ala, he says, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدَهُ. He said, is not Allah sufficient and enough for his slave? So Allah Ta'ala refers to the Prophet ﷺ as being his slave. And this is due to what the Prophet ﷺ being complete and completing al-ubudiyya, giving the ubudiyya and completing it the way it's supposed to be completed. And this ayah can be found in Surah Al-Zumar in his verse 36. وقال الله تعالى, and Allah Ta'ala, He says, الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب. Allah Ta'ala, He says, and all praise and thanks belong to Allah, the one who sent down upon His slave the book. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks to the Prophet ﷺ, or speaks about the Prophet ﷺ, and He calls him His slave. His slave. And this is something that is honorable and noble. Right? Some people, especially the people who are descendants of people who were slaves, sometimes they have a distaste for this word, slave. Right? Sometimes they have a distaste for it. Even so much so, sometimes people say, well, can you just translate it as servant? Right? Sometimes people translate it like servant, and that's okay. But it's slave too. Slave. Right? But sometimes they have a discomfort. Why you say slave? Right? But the reality of it is that it's an honor to be a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a noble thing. Right? That's a noble thing. To be a slave to Allah, that's noble. It's noble. One time, it's short, off topic, but one time there was a cab driver in Egypt, right? And he tried to disrespect me. Right? And he said to me, he said, it's a Abid. That's what he told me, right? He said, you a slave. You from the slaves, right? That's what he said to me, right? So I looked at him and I said, Naam, Lillah. I said, yeah, to Allah. Like, yeah, I'm a slave. What to Allah? Like, what you say? Like, I'm supposed to be disrespected? Oh, I'm sorry, you're supposed to hurt my feelings or something? Yeah, I'm a slave to Allah. Alhamdulillah. And then he looked at me, he looked so stupid. He had no rebuttal, he just drove off. You understand? But this is the reality. Now we slaves to Allah. Alhamdulillah, that's a good thing. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He refers to the Prophet ﷺ as being His slave. And that is a title, that is of nobility. Now. And you see, like this is how our perception of the world is supposed to be. It's supposed to be shaped and molded by Islam. By Islam. Now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this ayah, that one there, it can be found in Surah Al-Kahf, first ayah. Surah Al-Kahf, first ayah. And Allah Ta'ala, He says, سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام. Allah Ta'ala, He says, in all, glorified is He who has taken His slave by the night time to, from the Masjid of Haram, the Masjid al-Haram. Naam. That all glory and thanks be to He who was taking His slave by the night time from the sacred Masjid. And this ayah can be found in Surah Al-Isra, and it's the first ayah from Surah Al-Isra. Naam. So ala kullin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He refers to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as His slave. As His slave. Now, so this is an honored term. So we know from these proofs and evidences that the Prophet ﷺ, he is the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, and so now we come to the second pillar, which is Rasul. The Shaykh, he says, وَمَعْنَى الرَّسُولِ, and the meaning of messenger, المبعوث إلى الناس كافة بدعوة إلى الله بشيرا ونذيرا. He said, is one who was sent to all of mankind to give da'wah to Allah, giving glad tidings and warning them. One who was sent by Allah, that's a messenger. One who was sent by Allah, not one who make a claim like Elijah Muhammad or Noble Juyaanee or whoever else. Try to make a claim as if they were sent what I meant. No, the one who was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. all of the other ones who come after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they claim that they are a messenger, they know for surety that person is a Dajjal. He's a Dajjal. He's a liar. He's not a messenger. The Prophet ﷺ, he's the final prophet and messenger. على كل حال, the Shaykh, he says, وفي الشهادة له بهاتين صفتين. He said, and in the shahada, that the Prophet ﷺ is the messenger and the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we have these two characteristics. And these two characteristics, or with these two characteristics, نفي للإفراط والتفريط في حقه صلى الله عليه وسلم. Then these two characteristics, then they would negate any type of exaggeration or neglect as relates to the rights of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فإن كثيرا مما يدعي أنه من أمته إفراط في حقه. The Shaykh, he says, وَالْغَلَى فِيهِ. He said, because verily you have many, يدعي أنه من أمته, you have many who claim that they are from his ummah, from the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they exaggerate with regards to his rights, and they go to the extremes with regards to his rights. حتى رفعه فوق مرتبة أو مرتبة العبودية إلا مرتبة العبادة له من دون الله. And they raise him, they exaggerate his right until they raise him beyond the realm of ubudiyyah, beyond the realm of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the level of being worshipped instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاسْتَغَاثُ بِهِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. And you find that they ask for help in times of peril with him instead of Allah. وَطَلَبَ مِنْهُ مَا لَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. And they ask the Prophet ﷺ for things in which only Allah has the ability to do. مِنْ قَضَاءِ الْحَاجَاتِ. From fulfilling their needs. وَتَفْرِيجِ الْقُرْبَاتِ. And from relief of their grief and of afflictions. So you have this on one side of it, right? And then the Shaykh, he says, وَبَعْض الْآخَرِ جَهْدَ الرِّسَالَةِ. And others, they arrogantly reject his messengership. أَوْ فَرَطَ فِي مَتَابَعَةٍ. Or they are neglectful as regards to following him. وَاعْتَمَدَ عَلَى الْأَرَّاءِ وَالْأَقْوَالِ الْمُخَالِفَةِ لما جاء به وتعسف في التأويل الأخبار أو تعسف في تأويل أخباره أو أخباره وأحكامه. And they rely upon the opinions and the statements that contradict that which he sallallahu alaihi wasallam he came with, and they commit atrocities as relates to the interpretations that they give to that which the Prophet ﷺ came with, and to the rules and regulations in which he ﷺ he came with. So you find that these two groups, those who go to the extreme with regards to the rights of the Prophet ﷺ, and those who are neglectful of his right, then that which would negate both of this type of actions and behavior is by understanding the pillars of وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, which are that the Prophet ﷺ, he is the abd, he is the slave of Allah, which will negate the first type, and he is the Rasul of Allah, which will negate the second type and second group. And then the Shaykh, he moves on to the next section, which deals with the shurut of La ilaha illallah, which deals with the conditions of La ilaha illallah, but they are that which is deserving of a class of their own. So therefore نتوقف هنا فنكتفي بهذا القدر. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وجزاكم الله خيرا.